The official opposition leader, Andrew Scheer, joins us from the House of Commons foyer. Mr. Scheer, I'm trying to put this in the big picture because it's a legal way to avoid taxes. Why is it so wrong for Canadians with millions of surplus dollars to take advantage of these havens?
Well, the issue here is about the Prime Minister and Justin Trudeau's attack on working Canadians basically since at least July, but even in his first few budgets, raising taxes on working Canadians, taking away tax credits, and this outrageous attack on small business owners since the summer. Meanwhile, going after employees who enjoy a staff discount and people with disabilities like diabetes. So you put that into context. That the explanation for why they had to do that was because there are all these people out there who are just structuring their finances or structuring their businesses to avoid paying taxes. And here we have, at the end of this process this summer, these revelations that the people who are going to suffer with Justin Trudeau's policies are the very people who create opportunities, the small business owners, people who legitimately run businesses and try to create opportunities. But a group of people who were not touched were his wealthy friends, the people who have the ability and the capacity to hire lawyers and accountants to set up these kinds of accounts were not being touched, whether it was owners of Morneau Chappelle, people who own vast amounts of shares, they were all being protected. So our point today is more about the hypocrisy, more about the fact that this Liberal government, Justin Trudeau, has been demonizing a whole swath of the Canadian population. Meanwhile, the circles he runs in, his close friends, his wealthy buddies, are able to continue structuring themselves and their businesses so that they pay less tax and less tax here in Canada.
Okay, I want to narrow it, if I can, on the Paradise Papers. I'm wondering if you think that Stephen Bronfman or Leo Kolber, the retired senator who was also named in this, they're serving as fundraisers to the Trudeaus, both Justin and Pierre, in exchange for favors, like to go easy on tax havens. Are you seeing a direct link in what they're doing and what they're getting from it?
Well, that's certainly of great concern. You know, we want to get to the bottom of that. Anytime you have someone that provides a great deal of support in terms of fundraising, and keep in mind, Justin Trudeau tried to characterize Mr. Bronfman as a volunteer. Well, you know, I don't know that he was brought to Washington for a state dinner because he was a very effective door knocker, because he stuffed a lot of envelopes and put stamps on them. You know, he was on that state dinner with the Prime Minister for a reason. And we want to know why. What business did he have in Washington that Justin Trudeau brought him along, leaving his own natural resource minister here in Ottawa? We know that former Liberal senators were fighting against making changes to the way Canada treats tax systems in other countries. We know that Liberal senator was a close friend of Mr. Bronfman. So, you know, this government's under a lot of questioning already on conflicts of interest and why they're able to, or why they chose to structure things with, whether it's the finance minister or others. And so this is certainly shaking Canadians' confidence as well.
I'm curious, Mr. Scheer, what the Prime Minister should do to convince Canadians this tax system is fair. I mean, it's kind of hard to shut down an international set of tax havens. What's the logical response to this revelation?
Well, let's be clear. The issue is, you know, obviously many Canadians, both individuals and businesses, invest in operations and enterprises around the world. That's not what is at issue here. What is at issue is whether or not people were doing anything wrong. Were they breaking the rules? It'll be up to Mr. Bronfman and others to justify the way that they structured their businesses, their holding companies, their investments. It'll be up to Canada Revenue to ensure that the rules were being followed and that anyone who has a tax liability to Canada actually has to pay that. But you know, the problem here for Justin Trudeau is that this wasn't happening in isolation. This just didn't happen on its own. It's not like in the House of Commons we were debating transport issues or you know, other aspects. We've been consumed for the past month and a half on this whole idea about tax fairness, this whole attack on small business owners, retail workers, now people with disabilities, having their taxes raised, all in the name of tax fairness. Meanwhile, the very people that the Liberals claimed would have to pay more are being protected. So we have all the shareholders in big companies like Morneau Chappelle not paying higher taxes, while small business owners are being forced to. We have now his wealthy friends like the Prime Minister's not being targeted, or at least for years being able to structure themselves in such a way to avoid paying their higher taxes here in Canada. So that's the contrast. That's the issue here. I'd like to, if the Prime Minister had have answered the questions over the last 3 weeks in terms of Bill Morneau's ethical issues, people might give them the benefit of the doubt. But this is coming on the heels of several scandals where the Prime Minister just refused to disclose information, and it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look transparent, doesn't look accountable. I think that's why this is going to be a big problem for him.
Okay. I'll give you that this is a great narrative for the opposition, that one tax gift seems to lead to another one the next day or week. But I'm curious how you react to the fact that the Conservatives had a decade in power. They could have closed down these havens or at least tried to restrict these loopholes, and you didn't do anything. Isn't your party partly to blame?
No, I would reject the premise there, Don. We did a lot. We signed all kinds of agreements with other jurisdictions to provide for greater information sharing, so that the Canadian Revenue Agency can have access to the data, to the infos, to the hard facts. We signed these types of treaties so that both countries can make sure that taxes earned in a jurisdiction income earned in a jurisdiction has tax paid on it in that jurisdiction as well. So, obviously there's more work to be done. There's more tools that should be implemented. But, the previous Conservative government always went about trying to lower taxes and find ways to lower taxes for Canadians. This Liberal government is raising taxes on working Canadians, on small business owners, while at the same time their wealthy friends aren't being targeted. And it goes, the point I made about bringing Mr. Bronfman to Washington, that is, what was the justification for that? Why is it up to the Prime Minister of Canada to bring Mr. Bronfman down to Washington to make business contacts in Washington? It's raising a lot of serious questions that deserve to be answered.
Okay. Well, it's not a story that's over yet, Mr. Scheer. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Don.